Good morning, Simon. It's Ashley at the DAP Secretariat. Just confirming you have Councillor Connaughton in the room with you?
No, he'll probably be joining with Keith Woodthorpe, the CEO of the Shire Three Springs.
Okay, no worries.
I'll give Keith a text now just to make sure he's ready and not having any technical difficulties.
Yeah, unfortunately we can't see them online.
All right, I'll give him a call.
Great, thank you.
I can confirm Keith is just trying to get on now and he does have Councillor Connaughton with him.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Councillor Connaughton. Can you hear and see us okay?
Okay. Good morning. Keith Woodward from the Shire Three Springs. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, great. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Okay, we'll get started. Good morning, everyone. My name's Clayton Hyam. I'm the presiding member for this Regional Development Assessment Panel meeting this morning. I have with me Dale Page, the Deputy Presiding Member, and Karen Hyde, the Specialist Member. And of course, for the Three Springs matter, we have Councillor Chris Connaughton. I'll introduce the councillors from Port Hedland when we get to that item. I'll declare the meeting open at 9:38 and acknowledge that we're hosting this meeting on traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and are joined by people from other lands around the state. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respects to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. This meeting will be run in accordance with the DAP Standing Orders 2024 under the Planning and Development Assessment Panels Regulations 2011. The meeting is also being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with the regulations, and members are reminded to announce their name and title prior to speaking. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. We have an apology from Councillor Jenny Mutter from the Shire of Three Springs. There are no members listed as being on leave of absence, and minutes from previous meetings are available on the DAP website. We'll go to Part B and the Shire of Three Springs matter. I'm seeking a declaration of due consideration of all members. They show of hands if they're familiar with the material before you, please. Councillor Connaughton? Yes, sorry. Yes, thank you. Sorry, I didn't see your hand there. declarations or disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest? Councillor Connaughton, did that matter go to the Shire meeting?
It went to the last meeting, yes.
Okay, then under the DAP Code of Conduct, you'll need to acknowledge that that you're not bound by any previous decisions or resolutions of the local government, and you undertake to exercise independent judgment in relation to the matter before you. Thank you very much. Okay. We'll move to the item 3.1, which is the proposed power generation. We have presenters in person. We've got Crispin Collier and Renee Young. So if you'd like to come over, can I remind you that you have 3 minutes each to present. Thank you.
Morning, members. Thank you for the opportunity to present to the panel this morning. My name's Renee Young. I'm a town planner from Element Advisory, and I'll be speaking in support of the RAR recommendation to approve the proposed $100 million peaking power station on lot 10710 Tompkins Road, Arrowsmith. First, however, I'd like to introduce the proponent. We have Crispin Collier, who's Strike Energy's Chief Development and Marketing Officer, and we also have Stephen Lloyd, who's Energy's Environmental Approvals Lead, and Melanie Waller, also in the environmentals team. Strike's an independent explorer and producer of gas in the Perth Basin and is aspiring to be Australia's lowest cost onshore energy provider. Crispin will now provide a brief summary of the project's intent and its connection to Strike's broader development in the area, including the South Erregulla exploration well. I'll then provide a short summary of the key aspects of the proposal and its compliance with the framework.
Thank you very much, Renee, and thank you very much, presiding member, for hosting us today. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for considering our application in advance. Strike Energy is a relatively small West Australian company. We have about 40 employees here, and we have been exploring for gas in the state for about 8 years. We've had 3 nice successes, and we brought one of those gas fields onto production at Walyering, which supplies gas into the network. Some of those molecules you might have used to cook your breakfast this morning, and we're very pleased to be supplying gas into the energy transition here in West Australia. A few years ago, we had a terrific exploration success at South Erregulla, and we were hoping to develop a gas plant there. Unfortunately, that success wasn't replicated when we drilled the second and third well, and so we had a far smaller gas resource that was insufficient to support a gas plant to put more gas into the pipeline network here. We spent a lot of time working with AEMO and the regulators, and together we came up with a plan to develop a small peaking power station. That power station takes a small amount of gas, 4 terajoules a day, and we'll convert it into power for sale here in West Australia when the wind isn't blowing and the sun's not shining. We won't be supplying power when the wind is blowing and the sun is shining, because the electricity price is too low to support the gas exploration expenditure. But when it's not windy or sunny and we still want electricity, that's when the plant will operate. It's been a pleasure working with Keith and his team in Three Springs, both on the exploration plans at South Erregulla on the potential gas plant, and now on this electricity generation facility. I think we've been working very well with them. They've really complemented our team well, and Stephen Lancaster has been terrific in helping our Stephen and Melanie work through conditions which they'd like to see us adhere to during construction and operation of the electricity plant. All of which I understand we have agreed with over the last few weeks, and we're very much looking forward to getting your support here today, and then delivering the project and delivering electricity here in the cold winter evenings when people need it.
In relation to the project, the site's on the screen before you. It's located in the northern part of the lot, close to Tompkins Road. The lot area is 2,020 hectares, but the power station at site is only itself is only 2.9 hectares, which is 0.14% of the lot. The land's owned in freehold by Project Haber, who are a strike-owned company, and the power station, importantly, is located very close to the South Erregulla exploration well. That's gas infrastructure that's already located on the site and has been approved by DMERS. There's also additional infrastructure currently under consideration by DMERS, which is a gas processing or gas conditioning unit, to be located on this site. All that infrastructure is exempt from planning approval requirements under the Planning and Development Act. The power station itself comprises a large steel shed which encloses the generators. Outside of the shed, there are a series of stacks and radiators which comprises the power station. There's also an adjacent switchyard, hard stand and associated staff facilities, being a small office building, and a 50-metre gravel hard stand area which will separate this development from the surrounding farmland, which will continue to be used for grazing and cropping. I'll move on to the next slide. The Shire's local planning scheme number 2 doesn't contain a definition for electricity generating facility when the electricity is not derived from a renewable source. Ordinarily, Western Power would develop a facility such as this as public works which would exempt it from the need for approval under the local planning scheme. Having regard to the available land use definitions in LPS 2, we believe it's clear that the proposed power station is a use not listed and is undefined. Clause 18.4 of LPS 2 allows it to be approved as an innominate use where it's not specifically referred to in the zoning table. Having regard to the applicable planning framework, the proposal supports the objectives of the rural zone under LPS 2. It'll operate harmoniously alongside the existing agricultural operations on the site. Its scale and appearance are similar to large rural sheds, which are often found in this area, and its small footprint is also compatible with the ongoing sustainable use of the site. It will not impact the broader character of the locality. The proposal, importantly, is consistent with State Planning Strategy 2050 regarding reliable energy supply, SPP 2.5 regarding the ongoing sustainable rural use of the land, and the Shire of Three Springs local planning strategy vision, which recognises that the Midwest region is very important in supporting the state in future power generation. The specialist technical reports which supported this DA, which include traffic, air quality and noise, all support the proposed use of the site. And there are no objections from any of the 15 government agencies that this was referred to. There were 2 public submissions received and the Shire's addressed those through the conditions that have been recommended in the RAR. We would like to acknowledge the conditions and the work that the Shire's put into this, and we fully support all the conditions, and we'd respectfully request that the DAP support the application. And Crispin, Stephen, Melanie and I are available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, are there questions? Councillor, do you have any questions?
We're just wondering about, say, the road network out that area. Do they have any intentions of what they might do to the roads? I noticed on Mount Adams Road, they're supposed to, say, bitumise the first 60 metres of the road, but we're wondering about the rest of the areas with traffic going in and out. What are their plans to mitigate the conditions of the road when it gets wet and inaccessible? Like if we get a lot of traffic with heavy vehicles and when it's wet like that, occasionally we have to have road closures. How are they going to deal with that?
I think Strike understands that the Shire regularly closes the road during periods of wet weather when it's unsafe and inaccessible. And I understand Strike also has an agreement, or not a formal agreement, but there's a condition of approval recommended that deals with Strike needing to maintain the road by agreement with the Shire and repair all reasonable damage. And Strike's comfortable with that condition. And I understand that that has been similarly applied to other developments that Strike's done in the area, and it's working quite effectively.
Further questions? Look, just as a follow-up to that question, we're talking about condition 7.
Yep.
It says that where damage to the road network is caused by, that's sort of quite broad. I'm not quite sure what the road network comprises. I'll ask the Shire that as well, but
I would expect it's the gravel roads that Strike uses to access the site within the realms of the Shire of Three Springs. Predominantly, I mean, when this site is in operation, it'll be 2 to 5 people visiting very intermittently because it's an unmanned power station effectively. It will be mainly during that 18-month construction period when there might be heavier vehicles accessing the site on the gravel road network.
okay.
So
we have agreed to access the site from the Brand Highway through Mount Adams Road and
Right.
Tompkins Road after community feedback, and that they'd prefer us to focus the heavy vehicles on that route, which we support because it is the best route for the heavy vehicle traffic.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick one, I think, for Mr. Collier. Again, just quickly referring to the conditions, I think it's the last condition 17, which requires reinstatement at the point of decommissioning. Are you your understanding what would be required by that condition? Have you experience of that on other developments that you?
Strike has not had experienced decommissioning sites because we're still in the zone of sort of building out infrastructure as opposed to a 30, 40-year-old company decommissioning it. We are, very comfortable agreeing with this condition, and we look forward to decommissioning the site after long and successful use and when renewables can fully take the place of peaking power.
Right, and just as a follow-up to that, obviously in rural areas, biosecurity is very important. There is an advice note there which has been provided by DFID. How do you normally deal with issues of biosecurity, the kind of the dieback, the weed infestation, etc.?
Can I ask Stephen to answer that question? He's probably best placed to answer the question.
Yeah, look, we regularly encounter those sort of conditions to manage dieback and weed invasive species. Strike has typically hygiene stations and protocols for managing any risk of both dieback and weeds. So that involves looking at sort of where we source our material from, be that sort of ground material or otherwise, if that material is going to have any chance of any seeds in it, and also have the hygiene stations at the entry to the site.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all from me.
Thank you.
Just a quick one, and it actually, if you're not able to answer it, it may be one for the Shire to respond to in a little bit. But I note condition 3 talks about prior to commencement of operations, a bushfire management plan shall be submitted. Are there any components of this development in terms of detailed design which may rely on that bushfire management plan?
no, so I might answer that one if I may. The site's not actually in a bushfire prone area and it's not mapped as being bushfire prone. That's the site of the power station. We engaged with both DFES and the Shire about this prior to lodging the application, and the advice is that the application of SPP 3.7 is at the Shire's discretion. And so it was agreed that we didn't need to formally assess it at DA stage. Despite that, this is an agricultural area where there is concern about fire in cropland during summer, and there are farmers that need to follow bushfire regulations, and when they're harvesting in their crops, they need to carry fire extinguishers and a mobile fire fighting unit that has up to, I think, about 400 litres of water. Our application didn't deal what we were providing on site, but that Strike has fully agreed that it will do a bushfire management plan to set out all of those measures and meet whatever's required to ensure that bushfire risk can be managed. And it's not about bushfire risk from the power station, which can be shut down remotely. It's actually about bushfire, or I should say actually crop fire, which could come through the crops towards, and what Strike's doing to contribute to the broader local community who are a volunteer firefighting brigade and farmers who fight those fires. So
okay, thanks for that. So that a lot of that did come through in the report. So I'm hearing then that bushfire management plan is really about operations and not about design. There's nothing in there, nothing in the bushfire management plan that will rely on detailed design. You design the facility in a certain way to mitigate
Yep, the 50-metre gravel buffer zone that is proposed as part of the development effectively operates as an asset protection zone, and given the separation that we've got to all mapped bushfire prone areas, we've also sought some advice separately from Western Environmental who have said it won't change the design of the development at all. Rather, there might be, it's about what mobile equipment and other equipment might be available to assist. That's fine. Yeah.
Thank you. No further questions? Thank you for that. Simon, any comments, or are we just happy to take questions?
Look, no, I've got nothing further to add unless any panel members have got questions for themselves.
Other questions? Yes, Dale.
Just one from me, if you don't mind. In relation to advice note J, which requires a contribution agreement, and it's worded like a condition, and I do note in the report why that is so. Could you just explain to us why you think this specific proposal generates the need for contribution for community benefit? You have explained in the report generally why it's important to the community, but I'm trying to understand why this specific proposal you feel would generate the requirement for that.
Look, certainly, and it's not specific for this particular proposal. I guess Three Springs is at a nexus point on the 330 kV line where it has had a significant number of proponents, probably in the last 18 months, particularly 2 solar farms, 2 wind farms, looking at, I guess, strikes activities. Minginoo to the north is also experiencing this with gas processing, and it is a common feedback from the community that basically what is the lasting benefit, or I guess, from the community's point of view, because during a construction phase, particularly, there will be impacts on the road network as they go through seeding, harvesting time, damages, delays in repairs to roads. Also, I guess, the concern about what is the, I guess, the other issues as well that are wider in terms of, I guess, rental availability, land availability, what is the, I guess, local employment opportunities, and also, I guess, what is the environmental impact. So I guess these are concerns that aren't unique particularly to Three Springs. They're also across the entire Midwest and wheat belt. And I think these communities are very aware that there isn't a statutory mechanism at the moment. And when you get a proponent such as Strike, who've been happy to talk about that with the local Shire, it has been a, I guess, productive relationship that can be developed. If you do get a proponent that does not want to talk about that and doesn't really have an interest in it, there isn't a mechanism to do it. So it really is just at an advice note level, unfortunately. It would be better to have something that could be implemented so that proponents do have, I guess, a social obligation when they go into these communities that are disadvantaged in terms of their services at the moment. What is their contribution? At the moment, you could ask if some of these projects, if they didn't arrive in these particular regions, would the region actually be any worse off?
Simon, just as a follow-up, does the Shire have a policy that is developed around this issue?
Look, it is one that's, I guess, being looked at the moment. Minginoo does have one to the north. The Chapman Valley, I guess, another one does have one. It is a difficult one. It can basically almost give a roadmap of what a Shire or a community's expectations are, but it is very mindful that it's a voluntary thing. And this is something, I guess, that isn't just unique even to the Midwest or Western Australia. It's something that's being experienced on the eastern states as well with renewable ventures. It is a difficult space to operate in. It can really only be a guideline of what things and how it might operate, but it can only be really a policy. And I guess there's even dispute about whether that can be a local planning policy or whether it has to be an operational policy.
Thank you. Dale, further questions?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of quick ones. Following on from my question around the biosecurity protocols, I note that that is in an advice note, but would you have any objection to that being added to advice note F as well, which highlights those matters for the construction management plan to take account of, if we were to add biosecurity protocols as an additional point within that advice note?
Well, look, certainly that'd be and whether you then want to just streamline it and have it removed as a separate one and added to that, or kept in as, look, is obviously I did previously on another DAP matter actually ask for it as a condition, and then it was removed as an advice note because it was understood to be covered by other legislation. But certainly to flag it to proponents is an important thing.
Right, thank you. And just a quick one following on from the presiding member's question around condition 7. Is there a way of tightening that one up? Would it be appropriate to sort of add in words to the effect of a gravel access road, or because it just does talk about any road infrastructure, so it's a little bit loose at the moment.
Yeah, I guess the problem, unfortunately, we do have is entirely a gravel road network when the local road network to reach that site. And I guess some of the issues we do have is occasionally for safety reasons, the road does have to be closed and there are alternative access points. So what agreements can be done? At a construction phase particularly, there will be, and that'll be dictated a little bit by Main Roads as well as to what they're happy with in terms of access to site. That's probably the key point of impact on a road network, and occasionally shut down operational phases periodically through the life of it. As was raised earlier, the operational one generally will be fairly low impact in terms of it. Without knowing exactly what the road alignment has been. Up to now, there has been, I guess, different. Natta Road to the north has been used by the proponent. Mount Adams Road to the west has been used. So there have been different alignments. So really it was to try and have a nexus between obviously the activity of the proponent and I guess the roads being used rather than just a general catch-all one. But it has been a little bit difficult to say, look, it's road A, B and C when there has been, I guess, across the period of exploratory drilling and other operations at the moment, there has been a number of different road alignments used for various reasons.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. No further questions.
Just, I think it's a fairly straightforward one, Simon. Conditions 16 and 17. 16 refers to a preliminary decommissioning plan, and then 17 talks about the approved final decommissioning plan. So I presume somewhere between those two, one will convert into a final plan. Is that the...
Yeah, and obviously, if it's fairly elastic in terms of what the lifespan of this is, that's obviously dependent on I guess, a finite resource, but also improving technologies may mean that it operates for longer than expected. It is going to be a little bit generalised in terms of what you can promise at this stage in terms of a time frame. I think the end goal, obviously, of being returned to pretty much the state it was at the start and returned to farming is probably the recommendations of any report, but it probably will have to be a little bit generalised in terms of timeframes and processes, given that how long it's there for, and it may not be operating in exactly the same manner as at the start. As technologies improve, it probably makes it a little bit of a nebulous one.
Okay, right. Thank you for that.
I've just got a hand up.
Sorry,
Councillor,
yes.
Hello, it's Keith Goodwin here. That was me who put my hand up. It was when you were discussing the developer's contribution, and I did have a couple of comments regarding that, but it appears that we've moved on from that space. Are you still happy for me to talk about it for a few moments?
Yes.
Okay, in the Shire Three Springs, we are looking for developers' contribution from all of industry. We in Three Springs have to pay for our medical service, for example. So council does have a draft policy in regards to a medical community benefit scheme. What we've found in the past is that the various businesses come along and make a token gesture and donate a few dollars to this club or that event. What we want to do is align that effort into a single cause. In Three Springs, we spend about $300,000 a year on doctors. We employ doctors. A 1% rate increase for us yields about $20,000. So you can see the value of our medical initiative. If we don't provide a doctor, we no longer have a doctor at the hospital for emergency services here in Three Springs. And it makes the sustainability of the hospital unpredictable. So that's why we've introduced a developers contribution scheme to hopefully raise resources to offset some of the costs that we have to pay as a local government in our community to providing doctors not only for Three Springs and private practice, but also to support the Three Springs Hospital in their emergency department, which has a flow-on effect to St John's Ambulance. The agriculture industry is it's actually more people are killed in agriculture under workplace health and safety than any other industry within Western Australia. So for us to maintain a medical service in Three Springs is very important. If any of these industries during construction or during operation have a industrial accident, the hospital and the doctors that will be involved in that will be coming from Three Springs. So we believe that the community benefit scheme that entirely focuses on medical resources is a good fit for us. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for those comments. I think one of the issues that Simon will face and we face in relation to that is that whatever we approve here in terms of conditions and probably the advice notes, it has to have a planning purpose, and that's the linkage there is probably a little bit stretched, but as Simon has suggested, it's probably better left as an advice note. Further questions?
Just a follow-up, if you don't mind. So, given the presiding member's comment and the information in the report and the challenges with imposing these type of contributions in a planning approval, have you been having productive conversations with the applicants about that scheme that you have discussed, Mr. Connaughton?
I'm happy to. Thank you. It's Keith Goodwood here. Yes, we have discussed it with the applicant. What they said was that they are unable to make a commitment at this stage until they get a better understanding about the type of rate that they would be paying on the land. And quite quickly followed up that there is no statutory platform for us to enforce such a condition. It really is a matter of goodwill.
Yes, correct. Thank you for that. All right, there's no further questions. We'll move on to the item. We have a responsible authority report with a recommendation for approval. Is there a mover for that? Yes, Dale, thank you. Page, seconder for that? Yes, thank you, Karen Hyde. Thank you. Dale.
Yes, look, I'm happy to support the proposal, noting from the report and the presentations that it doesn't have any heritage constraints, doesn't require any clearing of remnant vegetation outside bushfire prone and acid sulfate areas, and will have negligible impact on surrounding properties and surrounding road network during operation. Particularly pleased with the condition about the visibility issues relating to the access point on Tompkins Road, support the condition for this to be located to the Shire satisfaction. And just to respond on the record to the issue of the community contribution, absolutely hear what you're saying about the need for local community support, social services and social infrastructure. But as per the presiding member's comments a little bit earlier, we find it very difficult to impose that as part of a planning approval when there is no developer contribution plan in the scheme and it doesn't have a planning purpose. So I do note that you requested to support the conversion of advice note J to a condition, just to send a message that this is a thing that needs to be looked at, but I just don't feel that we can justify that in terms of need and nexus in the case of this specific application. So I'm happy to leave that as an advice note at the minute and hope that you can come to some informal agreement with the applicant, but not prepared to convert to a condition at this stage. So happy to support the proposal, happy with the conditions that have been listed. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. Karen.
Thank you. Yes, I too support the approval of this proposal. As the gas-fired power station, I think it has been appropriately assessed under the Shire's planning framework as a use not listed. However, the function, scale, operation, and overall activity associated with the development I find to be compatible with the objectives of the rural zone. And obviously note that current uses of a rural nature, some of which can continue alongside the new development. I'm satisfied that things like air emissions, noise, traffic visual impact, effluent are all managed by conditions within the proposed approval or through operational requirements. Likewise, as per the Deputy Presiding Member, whilst it's not strictly necessary for a bushfire management plan, I think it's sound planning to do so, given the nature of this facility. And I appreciate that there is detail to come through from the reinstatement at the point of decommissioning, and I'm quite comfortable with the staged process that the conditions have highlighted. I would take this opportunity to suggest to the Shire that they do, in their next round of planning review, look at the cumulative impact of some of these transitioning energy uses and also non-traditional rural uses, and that may assist the Shire in planning for contributions in the future to support community. I would like to take this opportunity, please, to add an amending motion to add to advice note F. It would be in Roman numerals point 17, I think, which would be the words biosecurity protocols, so that brings forward what needs to be also concluded in the construction management plan, but I'm comfortable to leave the advice note I, which deals with other matters, referring to DPIRD.
Okay, thank you. I've got an amendment proposed by Karen Hyde. Is there a seconder for that? So, thank you. Is there any discussion on that amendment? No, okay, I'll put the amendment and all in favour. That's carried unanimously, thank you. Karen, the floor still with you.
No, I'm fine. I'm comfortable to leave condition 7 as it is. I think it is a little uncertain at the moment, so I'm happy to leave the flexibility in that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Connaughton, did you want to make any comments at this stage?
No, I'll just reiterate what Pete said with the contribution towards the community. That would be appreciated, but of course we don't understand what the rates factor will be at the time. But we would like them to be involved in the community and be known, not just on the outside and drive in, drive out. Yeah, we'd just like to be involved a bit more. And no, that's about all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I too fully support the proposal. There's not a lot for me to say. It's already been said by the previous speakers. In terms of the community contribution, again, I would press the Shire to look to setting up some sort of a policy or program that they can then link these things to. I think it makes it a lot easier for us to be supportive of those sort of things. So having said that, I'll move back to the mover to wind up the debate.
Nothing further.
Nothing further to say. I'll put the motion as amended. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you to councillors and staff at Shire of Three Springs. So we'll move on to part C, Town of Port Hedland.
Yeah, I'll move once I've spoken anyway.
Good morning to councillors and staff, Town of Port Hedland. Just to reiterate, I'm the presiding member, Clayton Hyam, and we have Dale Page as the deputy presiding member and Karen Hyde as the specialist member here. So joining me will be Mayor Peter Carter from the town and Councillor Camillo Blanco online. Thank you. Declarations of due consideration of all members duly considered the documentation contained within this part. Yes, thank you.
I have member, yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Has this matter been, I'm seeking disclosures of interest, has this matter been to council?
Yes, member. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yes, it has been to council for a couple of decisions. I think I've written some down here.
Yeah, I went to council last month.
Yes, okay then.
Yes, so I've been involved with decisions at the council meeting on the item, and I'm not bound by any decisions, and will be independent as required by the DAP.
Thank you. And Mayor Carter, the same for you?
Yeah, likewise, President Officer, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other disclosures of interest? No. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move to the item, which is the mixed-use development in Parola Court, South Hedland. We have some presentations online. We've got Owen Hightower. 3 minutes, Owen, you have available. Where are you? There you go.
Thanks. Thanks, DAP members. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for allowing me to speak today. I'm dialing in from Nulama Country, Karratha. And yeah, here representing a number of community members from Port Hedland who are seeking that the DAP resolve an alternative recommendation to refuse the application. The submission we've made in advance of me speaking today sets out a number of those reasons on page 1 and 2, but I'm sure there's more. Clayton, you probably know, in the past, I've been here on a variety of DAP members for workforce accommodation, but I also lived in Port Hedland for 8 years and have made the Pilgrim my home. And so over the last few months, I've had quite a number of community members reach out to me expressing concern about this proposal. So we've made a decision as a business to take on an advocacy role in relation to this application. I'm not going to speak to the reasons in my submission, but rather use, I guess, this time, to go over some of the content of the RAR report and just address a few of the matters in there that I suppose are relevant. As a starting point in relation to the development and land use, I think Belinda Morowitch in her submission put it aptly, saying, what is the DAP actually being asked to approve here? I've had a look at the application. There's not a lot of detail from the applicant about the nature of how the facility is going to use or be operated. My read is essentially that the application is a workforce accommodation facility as a whole, where there's been agreement reached with the town about making available some rooms for the community, but also that the ground floor kind of amenities are made open to the public. This kind of complicates things a little bit about how you interpret those land uses. That's something we addressed at length in a recent RDAP application. But the long and the short of it, the way that the nature of the operation is contemplated by the conditions is that a lot of the facilities is intended to be open to the general public. The workforce accommodation and tourist development uses are limiting in that factor. They don't really enable that to occur. And in our view, in that context, we see that the application is actually for workforce accommodation, shop, tavern, private recreation, office, noting there's mention of a Ventia office in the building and a cafe restaurant. None of these individual land use classifications have been given adequate consideration in the RAR report, in our view, and beyond the fact of that, we don't think these types of uses should be supported in a rural zone on the edge of town. In terms of the site context, the DAP report refers to the site being 12 to 1600 metres from the town centre. That might be the case as the crow flies, but in terms of connectivity, pedestrian and cycling access through this area is pretty limited. All the recreational areas to the east of the site are fenced off. Predominantly, there's no direct route. The only way is actually to backtrack along Parola Court back to Hamilton Drive and then come down. That's actually about 2.6 kilometres as I kind of measure it. And if I measure that distance relative to the size of South Hedland, that's basically the width of South Hedland, right? So in the context of proximity to the town centre and accessibility, I kind of question saying that the site is proximate to the town centre. You know, the Pilbara is a harsh climate. Getting anyone to walk 400 metres, let alone 1.2 kilometres or 2.5 k's is a bit of a stretch in my view. So to suggest that the site is adequately integrated into the urban environment, you know, doesn't really sit, and I don't think it's appropriate to suggest that in the context of the broader goals of the town of Port Hedland's workforce accommodation scheme provisions, policy provisions and strategy. In terms of the land tenure components, I think it's important to note that the proponent isn't tied to this site. They're not acquiring it themselves. They're seeking to sublease it effectively. There are alternative locations this site could be delivered and far more in alignment with the local planning framework. And I think that's an important point to note. They're absolutely not bound. If there's an absolute need for this, there's far better locations this could occur. Those sites, yeah, being the western edge and also in the town centre. I think an important part, again, in the tenure piece is this project, if it was to occur, would happen via a Crown Land subdivision, which obfuscates or deviates around the WA Planning Commission subdivision process and kind of doesn't really give the opportunity for our planning system to properly evaluate whether this site is suitable for the development and scale of development that a conventional Planning Development Act subdivision process would occur. And for that reason, the development application process really needs to be quite rigorous, in my view, to consider those aspects that we would normally deal with through a subdivision process. And again, I don't really see that being presented in the RAR report or the documentation provided by the applicant. Final little bit on that. I'm probably running I'm running out of time, aren't I? Consultation process has been inadequate. Julia Riff would be here if she could. She made a submission. You know, what's been advertised versus what was presented as presented now is very different. If I go to the design review panel process, as I read the concluding comments of the design review panel, they don't support the application as it is. It requires far more architectural input to deal with meeting both compliance with the policy, but also, you know, the SPP 7.0. I had someone say to me it looks more like a Soviet era style development than it does a high quality piece of built form. The applications doesn't align with the local planning strategy. It's identified as a conservation reserve. Going to clause 34 and clause 32, reading McLeod's advice, I would point the DAP members to 16 and 17 of the DAPs of McLeod's advice, which I think highlights the importance of being very careful about exercising discretion. Traffic and car parking matters. Yeah, again, I think it's pushing it after the fact and not being able to deal with those matters later. So on the whole of it, I really don't see any reason to be thinking about granting approval for this and exercising the extent of discretion that the RAR report seeks about approving workforce accommodation in the rural zone within 30 minutes of the town. And it certainly doesn't align with the feedback I've received from the community or the input in the social impact assessment, which makes it very clear in my view that this doesn't have the support of the community. And that's ultimately the purpose of workforce accommodation policies in the Pilbara, is to achieve outcomes the community supports, and I don't see it in this instance. So thank you.
Thanks, Owen. Questions of Owen from panel members?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Owen, just one question. You made the comment a couple of times that community members are opposed, that you gave us a lot of very technical planning reasons why it shouldn't be supported.
Yes.
Briefly, what's the community saying?
There's two distinct aspects to it, which is a real deal of concern about the nature of the application's been assessed and the information that's presented to the community about the proposal, and that there's been, I guess, a lack of procedural fairness in the way that that's occurred. But secondly, the feedback I have from the community is something like this belongs in the town centre. If you're going to do anything of this scale and mass, it should be in the town centre. And a community member said to me, if we had a visitor coming to Port Hedland or driving through Port Hedland, if they saw this development, they would logically think that's where the town centre is. And they would unfortunately get lost, and maybe that could be blamed on the Radburn design of South Hedland, but where they would arrive is not the town centre of South Hedland. And that was a concern, that if you're going to build stuff like this, it needs to achieve those integration goals the community is always asking for. And something of this mass and scale occurring should be in the town centre. I guess the other piece has been the length and duration and the size of the facility. This doesn't reflect what the community understands to be operational workforce. An operational workforce facility is much, much smaller and bespoke. This reflects the size and scale of a construction workforce accommodation facility. And that's my experience as well. I've never seen someone propose something of that scale.
All right, thanks, Owen. Appreciate that. Any further questions of Owen? No. All right, thank you very much for that. We'll move on to the applicants now, and we have a number of presenters there. So I presume, Jordan, you're going first, are you?
Yes. So thank you, presiding member. So in the room for the applicant in the Minter-Ellison screen is Nada Raphael, legal representative for the applicant. You've got Jordan Busher from the Resolve Group, Thomas Batula from Pacific Partnerships, who's a project director, and you've got Andrew Campion from 3DMC, who's not presenting today but is here to answer any design questions on behalf of the applicant. Online for the applicant, you've got Paul Guntles from Irby, who's a traffic consultant who'll be speaking as well today. So I'll hand over to Jordan so that he can.
All right, if you can keep it to the combined 3 minutes each.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, members and councillors. Good morning, everyone. I'm here to discuss the proposed tourist development and workforce accommodation. I'm excited to present an important development project for South Hedland that we believe will be a town-shaping project set to bring significant benefits to the Port Hedland community. Firstly, we're really pleased and supportive of the town's recommendation to the Regional Development Assessment Panel, which endorses our project and recommends an approval today from the RDAP. This proposal involves the development of $500 million tourism and workforce development at Lot 601, portions of 604 and 300 Parola Court, South Hedland. The proposed development fundamentally seeks to address the increasing demand for accommodation in town. This development will provide a significant boost to the local economy by creating high-quality accommodations, supporting tourism, and enhancing the attractiveness of South Hedland as a place to live and to visit. I guess at the backdrop of this project is the reality that the Pilbara is in a housing crisis and Port Hedland is experiencing growing demand for workforce accommodation in particular and tourism facilities. The region's experiencing substantial economic growth, primarily driven by the mining and logistics sectors. And we agree with Mr. Hightower's comment there regarding this being possibly a landmark site, which we see as a really pivotal opportunity in the future growth of South Hedland. Our site is strategically located next door to other workforce accommodations like Club Hamilton and Gateway Village. This not only underscores the suitability of the location, but seeks to create an integrated community atmosphere and provide easy access to necessary amenities sites. Opposite to the future planned South Hedland Integrated Sports Hub Precinct. The project team engaged with the design review panel on 2 occasions, and the feedback in those meetings was overwhelmingly positive and supportive of the concept, the scale, and the overall intent of the project. They did, however, encourage us to focus on functionality, landscaping, and aesthetics, which we're excited to incorporate into this final proposal, which we've worked very closely alongside the Town of Port Hedland's planning, regulation and related teams over the past 13, 14 months. The proposed development is situated within the South Hedland town site. While currently zoned as rural, it's part of a broader area undergoing rezoning as part of the town's long-term urban growth strategy. The zoning of this area as a rural lot is somewhat of an anomaly and is expected to transition to urban use over the life cycle of the project. This is in line with the peripheral rural areas around the urban edge, which are forecast to evolve toward urban zoning to accommodate the population growth and economic diversification. The proposal aligns with the overarching planning framework, including clause 67 of the planning regulations, and is consistent with the broader aims of the scheme in part 9 of TPS 7, which precedes the objectives of the individual zones. These broader aims guide South Hedland's development across all zones and talk to the development being required to enhance the town's economy, community and urban environment while supporting sustainable development, all of which we believe the development successfully adheres to. Just conscious of time, LPP 5 workforce accommodation policy outlines the desired planning and development objectives, which we're confident the project addresses in each aspect. The proposed development effectively integrates workforce accommodation into the town's fabric by situating in close proximity to the centre of South Hedland, ensuring long-term functionality through durable design and quality materials and a quality offering. It serves as a multi-purpose role within Hedland, providing essential housing for workers while fostering a sense of community. The aesthetically pleasing built form complements the local environment, enhancing both the streetscape and overall town appeal. By focusing on high quality, locally appropriate design, the development reflects a neighbourhood-like atmosphere, contributing positively to the area's future master planned growth. By addressing the demand for workforce accommodation, the project supports local industries, it creates jobs, it strengthens the economy, and like I mentioned before, it's strategically and appropriately located. In summary, we thank the Regional Development Assessment Panel and the Town of Port Hedland for their consideration of this application and the town's valuable input during its formulation during the design development stage. We're really excited about the positive impact this project will have on South Hedland and the immediate community in South Hedland and Port Hedland in particular. And we respectfully request that the Regional Development Assessment Panel members and councillors exercise their discretion in approving this project. Thanks very much.
Thank you, presiding member and panel members, partner at Mintrellis and Nada Raphael. There's 3 points that I would like to make in addressing some of the issues raised in opposition to this application. The first issue is the permissibility of workforce accommodation in the proposed location, being a rural zone within the town site boundary. The zoning table provides that workforce accommodation is an A use in the rural zone. There are then other requirements imposed on the use by clause 32 of the scheme, including a requirement that workforce accommodation not be permitted on the rural zoned land within a 30-minute drive of the town site boundary. However, when applying the scheme as a whole, that requirement may be varied by the discretion of the panel under clause 34 of the scheme. So in our view, there can be absolutely no doubt that the panel may exercise its discretion to approve the workforce accommodation at the proposed location, notwithstanding the objections that have been made. The applicant considers that the location of this development within the town site boundary on the urban fringe of South Hedland supports community integration and is suitable under the planning framework. The second issue relates to the classification of the use. So this application is for a tourist development and workforce accommodation together with ancillary uses. The ancillary uses are on-site facilities that are intended to be used by the guests who are staying at the tourist development and the workers who are occupying the workforce accommodation. To the extent that there may be a small percentage of the public who access the cafe and the retail facilities with street frontage, in our view, that does not change the characterisation of the use from a single development for tourist development to multiple uses, including a separate shop. However, if the panel forms a different view about that, then the applicant is prepared to accept a condition that the use of the ancillary facilities are limited to the guests of the tourist development and the occupants of the workforce accommodation, as well as their authorised visitors, to put that issue beyond doubt. The final point that I'll make is that we consider that the town has undertaken a proper assessment of this application, again, notwithstanding the objections that have been made. The revision to the application providing the additional rooms will not result in greater impacts, and you'll hear from a traffic consultant about that shortly. And it also does not constitute a significantly different proposal than what was advertised and does not require further advertising. So the proposal, we say, is essentially the same, and determination of this application should not in any way be deferred on that basis. There should also be absolutely no suggestion that there is an insufficient economic demand for this workforce accommodation. The applicant has made it very clear that this village will be occupied by workers in the resource sector and that those commercial terms are just currently under negotiation. Ultimately, this is a high quality accommodation proposal which will provide numerous benefits to the locality, including tourism, employment and other economic benefits. And we submit that the development application should be approved by the panel subject to the agreed conditions by the applicant. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you may have after the applicant's speakers have completed. I think we hand over to Paul Vantools, who's online.
Thank you. I did have a PowerPoint presentation. May I share from my screen, or is that something that would be shared from your end?
Share it from your screen.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Bearing in mind, we've got about 3 minutes left.
Yep, 3 minutes is perfect for me. Thank you. Okay, how's that looking for everyone?
Good.
Yep. Good morning, presiding member, panel members and officers. My name is Paul Gantis. I'm the Managing Director of RDAP Transport Consultants. RDAP was engaged to provide traffic engineering services for this project. We prepared a transport impact assessment in March 2024. Based on our technical assessments, we support the recommendation for approval. However, we do respectfully request that conditions 5.1 and 2 be modified. The proposed development does not trigger the need for road upgrades. I do note that a revised TIA is also a condition of approval. In the background, we've already undertaken revised traffic analysis to account for any increased traffic. And based on that analysis, we are confident that a revised TIA will not change the findings of our assessment. So conditions 5.1 and 5.2 require the construction of a link road from Shire Road to Parallel Court. However, we note that the subject site currently has a direct road connection from Parallel Court to the T intersection at Hamilton Road, which is circled in black. We undertook a detailed video traffic survey of this intersection in February and collected existing traffic data. We then created a model of the intersection and analysed the traffic for the forecast year of 2036. Analysis indicates that the intersection is expected to operate at the best level of service A for both the AM and PM peak hours. This is for the analysis year of 2036 and includes development traffic. We note that the road links in conditions 5.1 and 2 are already part of regional road planning for the town. These links are planned for eventual construction based on my understanding, with or without the development. So in conclusion, the proposed development does not trigger the need for road and intersection upgrades. However, I understand the applicant is willing to consider alternative conditions which facilitate a contribution to the cost of constructing the road links in question. So thank you for your time and happy to take any questions with the project team.
Thank you. Sorry, back to Thomas, are we?
Yeah, apologies, I'm muting. Good morning, presiding members and panel members and officers online. My name is Thomas Wetula. I'm the project director for Pacific Partnerships and responsible for the implementation of the developments. Today, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to the panel, but also would like to thank the collaborative approach that we experienced with the council in developing this project. Two specific points I want to cover this morning. One is the public access to the developments. So it is intended that there will be a controlled access by the public to the workforce accommodation development. The tavern itself is an ancillary use of the workforce accommodation, as noted by Nana. It is going to be used by the workers and authorized visitors. Our on-site staff will be facilitating this access as well. The tavern is contained within the development, so it's not on the street frontage, and it won't be accessible directly from the street, and it should not be considered a separate use as a consequence. We'll not apply for separate approval for taverniers, even though it is discretionary in the zone, because we see it as being for the use of the workers only. In relation to the cafe and retail components on the street frontage, these are a component of the tourist development. And from an operational point of view, we will be managing these facilities for guests only, if the panel requires no access by the public, as highlighted by Nada here. The second point this morning is really the community benefits derived from these developments and a commitment from Pacific Partnerships to deliver positive social outcome, as we've successfully done on multiple projects. The main benefits here is really the activation of the parallel court precincts and the surrounding road network with significant investment in streetscaping, which in the context of the council plan investment in the neighborhoods such as the South Hedland integrated precinct will be meaningful, but also the master plan communities going southwest of South Hedland. This development only partially addressed the structural deficit in the accommodation sector in Port Hedland, which is due to further increase in the next 10 years. This deficit is pushing businesses in using private housing stock to meet their needs and desimplify the current cost of housing pressure on the local community. We will also bring economic opportunities for local business to operate out of the retail precincts, and that also include the opportunity to operate a commercial laundry to support the facility, but also potentially the two workforce facilities in the neighborhood. We'll also establish the Pacific Partnership Community Reference Group to co-design alongside key stakeholders and the council the long-term benefit sharing program that will deliver social, environmental, and economic outcome, and that through partnering, grant, and sponsorship typically. Happy to discuss further. And then importantly, we're looking at procurement and employment strategy to involve MS local supply and workforce as possible during both the construction phase and operational development. This development is significant into the town and is required to meet the increasing demand for workforce accommodation. And that's by the mining industry traditionally, but importantly, the energy transition and the new green manufacturing industry, which are planning to call Port Hedland their home in the near future. The increase in demand is also not about numbers. It's also combined with sharper focus on psychosocial safety and well-being of the workforce, which employers generally see as a significant driver to improve that positive integration with the local community. On that basis, we respectfully request that the development application is approved, subject to the conditions as requested by the panel, and I'd be happy to answer any question you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from panel members of the presenters?
Just a couple of short ones, if you don't mind. To the applicant team, how long have you been working with the town of Port Hedland on this proposal?
About 13, 14 months in total.
Okay. And what is the timing imperative on getting a planning decision from the DAP on this?
there are some commercial terms around that, and we would, it's expected that we'd receive a determination for an approval today.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Yes.
Yes, Sharon.
I think we've heard about the potential for rezoning and so forth in accordance with the South Hedland growth strategy. Why was that rezoning not brought forward to provide alignment with this proposal?
Sorry, is that a question for us or for the town?
For you.
Well, I mean, we'd be largely guided by the local government in that instance. I respectfully believe that they'd probably be in a better position to answer that.
All right, I'll put that question to them. Following the design review panel.
So just to respond to that also, so from the applicant's perspective, we did not consider that a rezoning was necessary for this proposal, although it's in the future plan of the town to extend the urban zoning.
Okay, all right. Following the response from the design review panel, which is outlined in the RAR, what action has been taken since that critique?
Yeah, sure. There was quite a number of them. I've got a large list of dot points I can go through, but in terms of broadly covering it, there was a significant addition of landscaping. Quite frankly, our initial or our most recent plan taken to the DRP probably had insufficient amount of landscaping. We took that on board and have now provided extensive landscape network, including shading, coverage, advanced trees, connected path routes through to and within Corolla Court. We also got some advice regarding aesthetics, which were dramatically upgraded by we brought Andrew Campion on board, who provided some valuable architectural advice, and we modified particularly the external facades and the urban interface to Corolla Court. I guess notably the other main change was we really broke up the facade. The original proposal was quite a large elongated facade, and we modified that extensively in accordance with the BCA to be able to provide I guess a large modified change in depth to the facade, more articulation, and in some respects it helped us isolate the 6-level tourist style accommodation to the workforce accommodation.
Okay, thank you. One further question. The plans that we have before us indicate terminology like resort type and hotel type accommodation. Can you please clarify that?
So I think that was just the style of the room to say it was a high quality room. This is not a resort or a hotel from a use class perspective. It's just suggesting that these rooms are, high quality.
Okay, thank you. I'll leave it there for now.
Just as a follow-up to that, does that mean, I'm trying to get my head around what uses are being approved for what location, and if we're just talking about a tourist style accommodation, presumably the workforce could be in that tourist style accommodation. Is there when there is a change from actual tourist accommodation to workforce accommodation, is there a need to change the use via planning mechanism?
So there's the workforce accommodation, which is within a certain location on the plan, which is the units shown on the plan. And then there's the tourist development, which is towards the street, which is for, a tourist or people visiting Port Hedland. So,
okay. Yeah. Is the tavern part of the ancillary uses, or is it a separate use?
It's an ancillary use to the workforce accommodation. Mm. So it's to be used by the workers.
So it's not to be used by the public?
No, it's not intended to be used by the public.
Okay.
It's not a separate tavern use that's open to the public. It's effectively what would ordinarily be called, I guess, a wet mess in a traditional workers' camp, but it's being called a tavern for these workers. And there'll be some sort of, standards applied to it, no high-vis in the tavern and those sorts of things from a, social perspective, operational perspective.
In the scheme, the shop use has its own use classification. How can you say that that is an ancillary use to the tourist accommodation?
So there are on-site facilities so if you look at the definition of tourist development, it enables on-site facilities for the guests. It doesn't say exclusively for guests, but ordinarily they would be for the guests. And so those uses are there as part of that tourist development as on-site facilities. It's not intended to be, again, open to the public, but we accept that there may be people from the public passing by that would access those facilities, and subject to the conditions that are imposed, there might be some signage in relation to limiting it to guests only, if that's what the panel considers appropriate in relation to characterisation of the use. It is not intended that they would operate as a separate shop. It is intended to support the facility.
If it was accessible by the public, then it's a shop use in a rural zone, which is an X use.
Well, we'd say it depends on, I guess, the percentage of the public accessing it. If it is a limited access, it's questionable whether it would be a shop. But if the panel considers that allowing any public access that's not associated with the facility to change a characterisation of a use to a shop, then, as we say, we are prepared to accept a condition to absolutely limit it to the users of the facility. If
those uses are limited, then how does this proposal integrate with the town?
How does the proposal integrate with the town? Well, there are, I guess, a number of ways in which Thomas had talked about in relation to the community benefits to the town and its integration, as well as Jordan. So I'll leave it for others to speak about that.
Could you rephrase the question beyond the community benefits so we understand what you're trying to...
I'm talking about it as a facility on the edge of town, integrating with the town, not necessarily community benefits as such, as per that condition. This is more about the integration with the town from a planning perspective.
Yeah, sure, it's a valid question. Well, firstly, first point we would make is that this tourism development is open to everyone in terms of to be able to book and stay at this development, and whilst there, obviously, you will have exclusive access to those amenities reserved for the development. Notwithstanding that, we've got a significant engagement with the surrounding community by providing jobs and local businesses the opportunity to be able to vendor out of these facilities. And then obviously there's a contribution that these people that are staying here will make to the town. Obviously, being a 2-minute drive to the local Coles, that's going to be a significant contributor, I would imagine, as well.
Okay, thank you.
Follow-up.
Further question.
Follow-up to the presiding members' questions, and again referring to the RAR. One of the conditions the officers have put forward is that the social impact work done by creating communities at this point is still open-ended, and that the condition requires that to be updated and amended for clarity in accordance with, and the Shire and the town identify a number of other aspects to potential on-site paramedical staff, nurse paramedic, medical healthcare providers and businesses to fill spaces within the complex, potential attraction packages. Could it be developed as a conference venue? Now, to what extent are we to understand that those things are are likely to happen? To what extent are we to understand that those will be for members of the public, for the broader community? Could you clarify the intention, please?
And sorry, which condition was this? Just so that we've got the condition in front of us.
It's the condition that relates to updating the social impact. Just scrolling back up through this long report at the moment. Condition 9, yeah, condition 9, I think it is.
So, right.
Social impacts management plan, but not limited to the following. And there are 3 points there, but further in the RAR, there is clarity around what the town is actually seeking further discussion and input on, which is quite a list of other potential facilities, services, businesses.
So asking how that tourist development will allow for those matters?
Well, it goes to the point that the presiding member was making. How are we to understand what is for public purpose, what is for guest purpose, what is for tourism, etc., when those aspects of the social impact statement and management plan have yet to be clarified through that condition? What other things are likely to be added, and to what extent would they involve public access or purely guest access?
So some of the additional facility you mentioned for events and conferences. So the facility has what we describe as a business center, which allows for meeting, conference space, and working space. Again, our intent is to work with our guests in terms of the use, but we a bit like for the retail, we expect there will be some marginal demand for this from the public, and we've had discussion with local stakeholders informing us that there isn't enough of such space available in town. So once we acknowledge that need, the focus will be on the guests, but it will be available to use for the public as well.
Okay, thank you. Can I have another
Further
question,
questions?
please?
Yes,
To Mr. Gantus, in terms of your traffic and transport analysis, again, I believe that there is a condition that requires that to be updated. But what were the uses, the patronage, the visitation that you modelled? Given again, you know, there may be the potential, as we've heard from the proponent, for potential business centre, potential conference, etc. And I note from the RAR that if there's there's a potential limit on parking on site, that there are off-site opportunities on other Crown reserves. Could you please explain, how you've taken into account in your modelling for this cul-de-sac development, the potential for those other uses?
Yeah, sure. So we based it on the number of accommodation units, and I'm just having a look at my traffic report. Let's have a look at yeah, so we did look at, we've got separate, so we had accommodation rooms, that was 1320 rooms. And then we had a separate allowance for tavern and beer garden, which is conservative, assuming it generates extra traffic. So we used the trip rate for restaurant, I believe, to model that. And that was based on the gross floor area. And then we've also allowed for some traffic generated by retail / food and beverage. which was based on floor area as well. So we had 3 different land uses, and we did a traffic generation for each of those components and added it together. Now, if it's open to the public or not, that would just mean our analysis is conservative. So we did assume that the tavern and beer garden would generate traffic. We did assume retail and food and beverage would generate traffic, and we added that to the total. I understand that since that analysis was done, as I think the number of rooms has increased, but what we've done subsequent to this traffic report, I've done a sensitivity analysis for the intersection, and I actually doubled the traffic volumes that we had at the intersection on the side road there, which is a gross overestimate. So whatever traffic generation we had in our report, we're assuming it's being doubled, and it was still working fine. So I know that there's a lot of capacity at that intersection, and that's why I said in the presentation that when we do the revised TIA, that's going to be documenting everything formally, but I'm pretty confident that the outcomes aren't going to be changing.
Just in terms of the parking, then, if there is a parking shortfall currently in the RAR or reported in the RAR, is that correct?
I think from a planning, the information provided to us is there's no specific planning requirements. Is that right, Jordan? There's no, from a planning perspective, there's no relevant land use. Is that right?
Broadly, the workforce accommodation has within the RAR there has been allocated ratios, but within the policy itself, it is largely up to the discretion of the local authority.
Well, I could provide some commentary on the workforce component of parking. We've worked on 4 or 5 workforce accommodation type developments in my company, and what tends to happen is it gets to a certain point where when you have a threshold of rooms, then that development will stop providing extra car parking, and that's just because of the practical logistics. So what happens is when people are driving, they have parking at the workforce accommodation, but their worksite destination doesn't have enough parking to accommodate them. So it practically, logistically, there's a limit on how much car parking they want to provide at the accommodation end, because they don't want to have a huge car park at the work site. And that's why when it gets to a certain size, the ratio of car parking to rooms actually goes down as the site gets bigger. And what happens is there's better facilities for buses, there's more bus bays, and that's the way that they deal with it, is they start to bus the workers to the work site. So that was the feedback we had at Port Haven that we worked on, that they were increasing the number of rooms, and then the ratio of parking was lowering because they didn't want to provide extra parking at the work site.
Yeah, I might just add to that as well. Like, obviously there's commercial arrangements and situations whereby the operation of people being bussed in and out is taken into account, and we just confirm we don't have a shortfall. The town has advised that it's been more than suitable, and we, through our own due diligence with our commercial negotiations and with discussions with Paul, we've actually provided in excess of what would be ordinarily suitable. So yeah, there's no shortfall proposed.
Is that as per the current RAR or with the 25% increase in rooms?
That's with the increase in rooms. Well, both. Currently it's suitable, and with the increase in rooms, we've also determined it be suitable based on Irby's modelling.
Right, thank you. Any further questions of the applicants?
I do have a few questions now.
Yes, councillor.
Thanks. Just in relation to the intersection, how did we develop that modelling? And did we incorporate, the traffic movements in specific times, when work starts and finishes? And obviously I live here and I know that is a very, very busy road when people are going to work and coming home. And I can see problems within that intersection at those traffic density times. So I'm a little bit confused as to why you would suggest that there would be no issue with that intersection when I clearly see massive issues. FMG uses it, Roy Hill uses it. That intersection is used by BHP within the town, South Hedland town centre. There's other satellite mines out there, all going to work at the same time. My next question also, so there's one, but the next one is, the busing of people in and out. In my opinion, from what I see in this proposal, that's speculation. Okay, you're speculating that the proponent's going to use buses because we don't know who the proponent is currently. So, I've asked that question many times. I don't know who the proponent is. I don't know whether anyone's going to use buses. What do you have?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to those questions. So in terms of the traffic analysis we've done, we actually engaged a survey company to install a camera and record traffic at the intersection. So I have seen video of the traffic at the intersection, and we took traffic volumes that they were provided to us by an independent traffic survey company. So it wasn't us that collected it. I'll just try to share the screen again. I could show you this. Just share this. So these images are actually from the traffic survey company, and there was 2 cameras installed there, and there was some comment in the TIA that this is a T intersection and we modeled a 4th leg, and the reason we had a 4th leg is because there's actually a car park on the opposite of the intersection. So we made sure that traffic's being taken into account as well. And also what we noticed on all the workforce accommodation developments we've worked on, so some of those were proposed expansions. So we actually had the benefit of measuring the existing workforce accommodation traffic. And with those patterns, it was showing that the peaks for those accommodations tend to be like early morning around 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. earlier than like just a day-to-day AM peak hour. And then it was a 12-hour shift. So then afternoon was around 5 p.m. So we based our analysis on that. I can give you the exact timing. So for this site, we've actually measured the traffic on Parola Court, and that there's already an accommodation, a workforce accommodation to the east of this development site. So we took some traffic patterns from that and we assumed a similar traffic pattern. So for that one, the peak was 5:15 a.m. to 6:15 a.m. and then 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. So we assumed a similar traffic profile being a similar use. So that's the work we done, but that's just a good practice. That's how we normally would do the work. In terms of your question about the buses, Again, we're taking on board, I guess, experience from working on other workforce accommodation sites, and the feedback we had from big mining companies was that they had an issue. They don't want to provide too much car parking at the work site end. So when it gets to a certain threshold, they will switch and bus their employees. So that's like companies like BHP was one that I worked on, a few BHP sites. So it is a typical practice, and also the important thing to note is the development has to facilitate that bus activity. If it's not designed into it, then it can't happen. But in this case, we do have basically a dedicated bus pickup drop-off zone and drive-through, so that's actually provided. The amount of bus parking and capacity you have there, it seems to be intended to be used. There's not benefit to build this huge space that's just only for buses, and then it's just going to be not used. So that's our assumption, is the bus facilities are being provided, and that's because it's a workforce accommodation similar to other sites we've worked on.
So just to confirm, the applicant can confirm that this proponent will require the buses. So it's not an assumption, it is a reality.
It is a commercial framework that we have to work with. So as Paul said, we wouldn't design such a large pickup area and parking in a facility unless there was a strict requirement from our proposed clients, right?
Okay, thank you. Further questions?
Yes. You have explained, the traffic numbers on Parola Court, but the issue here is Hamilton Road. Do you have any numbers for Hamilton Road, which Parola Court goes on to? The intersection goes to Hamilton.
Yeah, so that was that screenshot that I showed in my PowerPoint. That was the intersection at Hamilton. So that intersection, that we have the full traffic data for it, including the percentage of heavy vehicles. That we actually paid money, and there was a company that flew there. They're Perth based, so they flew there and they spent the night there. They set up video cameras. So I have video of the traffic, and we have the full traffic count. And the good thing is it's an independent traffic count that's been done just by a survey company, that they're ambivalent to the data results. They just go and put up the camera, they do the analysis, and we just get the results sent to us, and that's the traffic volume. So if we did the analysis and it showed there's going to be issues, it would be in our client's best interest to know that. So they would need to know, because it would affect their development. And so we do the independent analysis. It's showing there's a capacity there. I also do want to note, I have worked on another project in Hedland, and as part of that, I did review, there was a broader traffic assessment done for that whole area, and that was by the town, and they had a traffic consultant, and they had an analysis of the same intersection existing, and it did show a level of service A in their report as well. And that's a report that the town has that they could dig into if they wanted to verify that.
Thank you. Mayor Carter, you've got a question.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. But I mean, at the last OCM council meeting, I asked they did a deputation. I asked about the number of staff being employed at the facility and where they're going to live, and the number of staff locally that could be employed for the facility. Look, I'm welcome, a $500 million development in town is great, but we still don't know who the tenants are. We have no idea who the tenant is for this project. The last design I saw, it looked like Alcatraz. I don't mind camps. I approve a lot of camps because camps are something for the town. But this one,
Mayor Carter, what's your question? We're at question time at the moment. What's your question?
My question at the moment is basically, who are the tenants?
Okay.
Okay, who are the tenants of the thing? They've got buses coming, they're saying the clients got buses. Well, I mean, no one knows who the tenants are. Okay, so I need to know who the tenants are, and basically how many staff is going to be employed and how many local people is going to be employed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gus.
Unfortunately, the applicant can't disclose who the tenant is at this particular point for commercial reasons, but it is a resource, it is a client in the resource sector.
I understand that.
Yeah, so forgive us, we unfortunately can't disclose that at the point in time.
Further questions?
Yes, I have a couple more.
Yes.
There was a comment made about a contribution towards the road development. Do we know you know what that amount will be or what they're prepared to pay?
So in response to that, the applicant has provided in its response to the draft conditions that it would be prepared to make a 50% contribution to those road upgrades. Notwithstanding the submissions have been made by Mr. Rantus, that is the applicant's position. It is prepared to make that contribution to the road upgrades. That the actual costings, my understanding, has not yet all been completed, but that will be done in consultation with the town.
Further questions, councillor?
That's all I have.
Okay. Are there any more questions? No. All right. Thank you for that. We'll move to the officers. You're just happy to take questions? Can't hear you.
Who are you talking to? Are you talking to?
I'm talking to the officers. Sorry.
Chaz, planning people, I think.
Yeah, I'm just can't hear you at the moment.
Can't hear you, Chaz.
No. All right. That's a lot of technology.
When it works, yes.
So it's at their end, I guess, the problem.
Yeah, I'll just wait and see.
Okay.
Back on and I'll promote.
All right. We just can't hear the officers. But just while we're waiting for the officers to come online, I'm going to seek a mover and a seconder for a 5-minute, well, 10-minute comfort break.
Moved.
And seconded, Karen. Thank you. We'll be back in 10 minutes.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, Chaz.
Hi,
Right.
Chaz, it's Ashley. Yep, we can hear you. Thank you.
Can you hear me, Chaz? Okay,
Yep, we can hear you.
that's good. All right, thanks, mate.
Unmuted.
Yeah, counter. And the applicants.
Hi, it's Ashley, the DAP Secretary. Just checking that the applicant team is in the room. If you can just turn your camera back on and we'll get started.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. We'll reconvene the meeting. We're with the officers who now can hear us and hopefully we can hear them. Gents, you're just happy to take questions?
Would you like to move and second a motion to come back in?
No, we don't need to.
Don't need to, right?
Thank you. All right, questions of the officers from panel members? Yes, Dale.
I have a few, so thank you for your indulgence. You've asked for an updated traffic impact assessment within 3 months of approval. Shouldn't the updated assessment with all the issues that it needs to respond to that you've identified over 2 pages in the RA be required to help us make an informed decision about this proposal? So I note Irby's comments that they've already done a lot of this work and that they don't feel that it changes the outcomes, but don't you think it's appropriate for that work to be part of an agenda before the DAP?
Through presiding member, the information is required, or that document updated, to provide anything that may be identified additional to the information provided. So if that information has been done or updated, as Mr. Gantos has indicated, it would be good for that to be provided to us. But it's there to identify anything extra that may come about through an updated document.
Okay. You've asked for, I think it's condition 5.5, you've asked for commitment to public access to certain components of the development as part of a legal agreement that you'll deal with later on. Again, surely this is not a later issue. Do you not think the DAP would need that information to make an informed decision on this? That's one question, but I guess given the applicant has now said that no public access, is that even still required, that clause? That's the clause of the condition.
Thanks for the question. I guess with these type of proposals where there isn't an anchor tenant identified, often what we find is that detail can be negotiated at a later date when an anchor tenant and their commercial requirements are known. So we've proposed a condition that aspect of the proposal can be negotiated. Same for the traffic impact as to how they're bringing guests to and from the site, and same to an extent social impact. In terms of the use classification, workforce accommodation and tourist development, obviously a tourist development facilities are for the guests, and for the workforce accommodation, they can be used for authorised visitors of the guests. So by virtue of the use classification, those authorised visitors may include members of the public.
Just onto the operational management plan referenced in the report and the conditions. Similarly, don't you feel that a draft operational management plan should have formed part of the application for the DAP's consideration, particularly given the other subsidiary plans that are referenced in condition 22 that are meant to be captured as part of that operational management plan and the significant issues that it appears that plan needs to resolve? So, for example, the health and safety management plan needs to address the location and provision of open space areas, privacy, the provision of recreation and end of trip facilities. Don't you think those design elements should be part of the application and covered in the RA for the DAP's consideration?
They definitely should be considered prior to commencement of works and or operation of use, and that's how the condition, I believe that component is proposed within 6 months of the date of approval. So certainly we'd expect to review the appropriateness of the OMP before construction commences or use commences.
So just as a follow-up, so you don't feel that there's aspects or components of that OMP that actually impact the planning merits or otherwise of this application, and DAP should consider those issues?
It may well be that certain components may arise which may impact the planning components, which may give rise to an amendment to an application. But at this stage, the critical point for the town is that that information is received prior to works commencing or use commencing.
Okay, so can I just have some comments on your views on whether you feel it's appropriate to deal with design quality and key design features of the development via a condition 8? Should these not have been resolved or largely resolved ahead of making a recommendation on the merits of a significant proposal like this?
The town of Port Hedland has a local planning policy on workforce accommodation, which includes key provisions around design standards, and the proposal has been assessed against those design standards, and it's also been reviewed by our design review panel, which the information is included in the report. We believe that generally the form of the proposal being outward facing, it's the first example of a facility of its kind in town, and the policy framework has been in place for about 4 or 5 years, and it's good to see the market responding with a form that is in line with what the policy is trying to achieve. All of our other facilities in town are inward facing with a central facilities. So yeah, I guess the general form of the building is supported. It's the facade treatments and those other components which are, we believe, very important, that the detail can be addressed as a condition of approval, with that later detail to be provided.
Right. I guess that's a bit of a segue to my last question. So your report does present some limited, I will note, information on the advice of the design review panel. But to me, it actually looks like the panel wasn't all that satisfied with the design quality and the information that was provided to them. So hence your conditions about design detail. What prevented you from resolving those design issues, putting the matter back to your design review panel to get a more glowing design outcome or commentary before bringing it to the DAP?
There isn't anything preventing the proposal being presented to a design review panel prior to the lodgement of a building permit. So our local planning policy on design review indicates we can do a pre-lodgement, post-lodgement, or prior to building permit to ensure those intricate details do meet the 10 design WA principles. And I guess due to that, the extent of that information, which isn't necessarily presented at this meeting, it is likely that further referral will take place.
Thank you.
Just as a follow-up to that, I presume the design review panel only saw the 1,300 odd workforce accommodation, or the unit application, and not the later one, which increased quite significantly.
In terms of the design, the modules really haven't changed. The additional rooms has just been incorporated into the original 2-story workforce modules, and now gone to 3-story. So in terms of the placement of the tourist development component, the 6-story building, the interface with the street, those design elements haven't changed. There's been some minor change with the shuffling of some of the ancillary uses for the workforce accommodation. It's the lounge has been moved from the bottom of the tourist accommodation development component over to the east side, but the general modules where they are haven't changed. The bulk of the urban fabric as proposed originally hasn't changed.
Thank you. Further questions?
Yes, please. I put this question to the applicant and they deferred to you. In terms of the zoning, and we understand it to be rural zoning at the moment, and you reviewed the planning scheme Amendment 5, I think, earlier this year. Why at that point, when this development proposal was sort of on the table, was the decision not taken to investigate this for an urban zone to incorporate it into the centre, to have a more holistic look at what a development of this kind or developments generally in this location might require, perhaps for integration with the centre and so on and so forth? Why was that not done earlier this year or prior to the application coming forward for a decision?
Yeah, look, we did consider rezoning it to an urban development zone as part of Scheme Amendment 5, which is currently with the WAPC and Minister for final determination. At that stage, we didn't have all the necessary technical reports such as bushfire, stormwater management, etc., which would be expected to be included in a rezoning of that nature. We evaluated the current zoning and the scheme permissibility, and we believe that the development is capable of approval under that current rural zone, and then those subsequent technical reports can be submitted at development application stage for this proposal. We also have a tender out to prepare 2 precinct structure plans for our town centres. The South Hedland Town Centre Precinct Structure Plan, expires in October next year. And it is expected that we will expand the structure plan to include this area along Hamilton Road and associated community and worker accommodation facilities to develop a future zoning framework, which is likely to include actions such as updating the scheme and rezoning certain plots of land based on the best known development outcome at the time.
So that's some time frame away, obviously. To what extent would a development like this in the rural zone on the edge of the urban area be compatible with the current conservation or compatible with its rural zone at the moment? How have you assessed that compatibility?
Yeah, so when we did the scheme review in 2019 to 2021, we established a buffer around the urban growth area of South Hedland and reserved that for environmental conservation to avoid the proliferation of unsightly infrastructure and inappropriately planned development. And that resulted in 2 or 3 blocks of land zoned rural, which I guess is I think someone mentioned anomaly zonings within that catchment. And so I guess, the precinct structure plan will resolve that. And in the interim, we believe the proposal has been assessed in accordance with the local planning scheme and policies. And we believe that, subject to conditions, it is suitable to be considered by the panel ahead of that structure planning process.
What's the timing for connecting the road network? Mr. Gantus has suggested that the town were going to make those connections anyway, with or without this development. The conditions of approval, which have been suggested for amendment by the proponent, are looking for a cost sharing or an implementation as a result of this development. But assuming that the town is a participant in that infrastructure program, what's the town's timing for those works?
The works, do you mean connecting to Shota or along Parola?
Both.
So the town's immediately adjacent site, the South Hedland Integrated Sports Hub Master Plan, that indicates several works packages, none of which funding has been committed to at this stage. but it includes a roundabout at the corner of North Circular and Hamilton, which would redivert traffic away from that Hamilton-Hudson intersection. So I guess there's an unknown to the timing of that stage of works at this stage. The town, within its forward works program, has no plans to construct that outer ring road on the western side of the subject site up to Shire Road. Development WA are looking at a 75-lot residential subdivision south of the site, which I understand is looking at government consideration in 2025. For them to construct that section of ring road is probably a bit of a stretch given the distance to the subdivision area. We believed that there was a need and nexus for the proponent, given the proximity of the site and the traffic implications for those and the bushfire escape route, etc., required from the development for that to be constructed by the developer. If it wasn't constructed by the developer, then these would be costs that would need to be borne by ratepayers and or the state and Commonwealth governments through funding mechanisms.
And so how do you, just last question as a follow-up, how do you view the proponent's request to amend condition 5 Roman numeral 1 and 5 Roman numeral 2 to only make a 50% contribution to those?
The town's preference would be that the developer pays in full for those connections. But if the panel form the view that a percentage is a more suitable need and nexus, then the town would support what the panel believes is appropriate.
All right, thank you. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
The tourist style accommodation, is it your understanding that that is only for the occupation of tourists in the town and could not be used by workforce accommodation or as workforce accommodation, just upmarket workforce accommodation?
There's no express prohibition on a tourist development being used as workforce accommodation. An example exists that the RDAP considered in the town centre, I think in 2022, where a 51-room tourist development was approved, and that's now going to construction. I guess a tourist could be a leisure tourist, or it could be a corporate tourist, or it could be a contractor tourist. And I guess as to how you define what a tourist is I guess important in terms of the context of the land use definition, but the land use definition is as per the model provisions when the scheme was done, and there was limited ability for the town to vary those model provisions when the scheme was considered by the WA Planning Commission. Those model provisions may have changed slightly, but through the conditions of approval, we're seeking to ensure that the entire facility isn't a closed off workforce accommodation facility, and it is open to benefit members of the community and the public to the extent that is suitable.
Is there a need to have a development application approved to switch from one use class to the other?
So for this proposal? I guess each individual proposal needs to be considered under its own merit, considering what the information the applicant provides and the land uses they're applying for. We have examples, of other sites within the town that are in a tourism zone and are approved as a hotel, but we know that large quantities of rooms are contracted to say trucking companies. But workforce accommodation is an X-use or not permitted in the tourist zone, and they enjoy non-conforming use rights. So it's quite a complicated issue with respect to the planning scheme and how these facilities operate. We don't believe that there is an ideal set of land use definitions across the state to differentiate between the two. And there's definitely opportunities to improve how the scheme operates, particularly considering the differences between them.
Okay. Did you, in your consideration of this, assume perhaps that the tavern and retail component would be used by the public as well?
It really depends on what is within those facilities. I guess to an extent, yes. But I guess that detail, as we're aware, hasn't been 100% finalised. So, yeah, look, that's where the conditions of approval are relevant.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Mayor Carter, you have a question? No? No? Councillor? No, okay, no further questions. Okay, thank you, officers, for that. We'll move on to the item. An RAR with a recommendation for approval with a number of conditions. Is there a mover for that? No mover. Okay, that lapses, and I'm seeking an alternative motion for it.
Presiding member, I did make some notes for an alternate, which I'd be happy to share. Those notes have been typed up, so.
Yes, thank you.
Scroll up to the top.
That's it, okay. All right, so Karen Hyde is moving that, and I'll give you a few minutes just to read through that, members of the panel.
There's just 4 or is there 5? That's the complete, no, good, yes.
Yeah, okay, let's just. TPS T, is that 7?
TPS 7, yes, there's a typo, TPS 7, do you mind? Thank you very much. TPS.
Is it LPS?
Town Planning Scheme.
Okay. Squad. The end of it, yeah. That's it. Thanks. Assessed impact. In 4 is assessed, I think.
We'll need the preamble because I don't think
Yeah,
that has
okay.
the
All right.
wording.
That's all right. All right. I presume everyone's had a chance to read that. I'm now going to seek a seconder for.
I'll second that, Chair.
Councillor Camillo, thank you. All right. So Karen, over to you.
Thank you, presiding member. Look, I recognise, the emphasis in the strategic planning framework for the town for workforce accommodation and the need for the town to continue to plan for mining resource industries while seeking to expand tourism opportunities. However, I am surprised that given the scheme was amended in February of this year, that the proposal which was on the table was not considered at that point, and that the town site was not expanded and rezoned for this purpose, and at the same time an appropriate assessment of scale, land uses, road infrastructure and utility could have been carried out to provide a better framework for this development. That to me would seem to be the right planning process. I don't agree with the officer's RAR that the proposal is therefore consistent with the scheme and the rural zoning of the planning scheme. And certainly I find it to be inconsistent with LPP5 workforce accommodation, as I do not see it being integrated into the surrounding area. I do not regard it to be of a high quality design. And again, much of the technical information is lacking regarding drainage, traffic, signage, all of which are supposed to be assessed under this policy. Clause 68 of the scheme highlights a number of matters through the deemed provisions for us to consider, but I find that there's insufficient information and certainty in a number of these areas. The social impact assessment, which determines a number of key implementation matters for infrastructure and services, is incomplete. And there's no certainty regarding the delivery of the connecting road network and how the development will contribute or be managed prior to the development of the network improvements. This uncertainty regarding the various user groups for the development and what impact they may or may not have on parking. I'm not sure how much vacant land and temporary off-street parking might be required, and the impact that that might have on the amenity of the neighbourhood. So given the uncertainty provided by the application and listening to the response to questions this morning, particularly regarding the future operation and management, and looking at the scale of this development on an edge of town location and in a cul-de-sac location, I'm unable to support the approval. And you know, whilst I do acknowledge that the scheme facilitates the potential through clauses 32 and 34, I find I'm not in a position to support the application. And a number of uses, whilst permitted within the rural zone, I'm not convinced that they are ancillary or incidental. So I feel the development should be refused at this point.
Dale.
It was Councillor Clement.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Camilla, beg your pardon.
Yes, thanks. So obviously I'm speaking for the alternative motion, but I definitely do disagree with the original motion. And you know, these are some of my views. The community position on infrastructure like this is clear. Through the strategic community plan, that does not support proposals like this. We are focused on residential living to support the people and commerce. It's inconsistent with the people of the area to support such a plan like this. And that is the original proposal. The advertising to the people on this proposal did not outline the dramatic shift away from the intent of the scheme in relation to building camps on rural land within 30-minute drive of the CBD, as stated in TPS 7. The people of Hedland didn't expect FIFO camps on rural land within 30 minutes of the CBD, period. Additionally, the advertised size of 1,300 rooms has changed to about 1,600 without any community consultation, and the technical documents remain the same, suggesting that an extra 300 rooms does not have any impact on any part of the proposal or the town's infrastructure or people. Now, we have had advice, you know, that the shop is an ex-use. So the advertised intent of the proposal with workforce accommodation and tourism together being open to the public is in question as well. And all these issues are well outside the standard need on information released to the public and for the council's consideration as well. The access by the public has changed, and we've been told that today. So apparently now it is, you know, from what I can understand, they do not have access. And this is totally opposite to what we have been told leading up to this position today. The applicants have chosen to use two planning and development areas to push the proposal through. The regulatory process with the town support, that being in scheme areas, workforce accommodation and tourism, both have different standards of approval in TPS 7, and both have different standards in relation to the rural land zoning. This has not been allowed to happen previously. So I'm happy that we are moving in this direction. Now, my read of the legal advice presented stated that any part of the scheme can be overruled by discretion.
Excuse me, Councillor Camillo.
Yes.
We just need to protect our professional privilege with legal advice, and we don't actually reference the legal advice. You can speak
Okay.
about it.
Thank you. No worries. I will refrain from that then. In relation to conflicts of financial interest, there's been reports handed down in the past criticising local governments that have put development proposals like this forward and have not issued independent planning and development reports in relation to the proposal. That outlines the compliance to the acts and the regs, obviously ensuring a transparent process. And I don't believe that's the case in this application. And it also raises issues with me relating to financial declarations in relation to council members that have voted on items like this when we don't actually know who the proponent is. So again, that's not best practice in my opinion. Without the required info on who the anchor tenant is, or a substantive user, the parking requirements should be at the maximum allowable to the scheme. The development only requiring 400 parking bays will clearly adversely affect the surrounding community. The unclear nature of the anchor tenant and the reduced parking requirement significantly adds to the problems already in the area. Without the developer supplying the information related to who is actually going to use it, the parking allocation should be at the maximum number. And I've not seen any adjustment to that, even after the proposal has changed from 1,300 to about 1,600. There are many community impacts omitted from the proposal, and there is a requirement to provide a comprehensive impact statement for a number of reasons, and the town planning scheme requires that reports should be submitted with the development application. And I have many issues with this proposal that haven't been addressed. Now, this is a key point to me. The reason why we have council members on the JDAP is to ensure members are aware of the historical intentions of the scheme. Now, the scheme text states that FIFO camps are not permitted within 30-minute drive of the CBD. That was inserted because we have a large rural living development already within close proximity to the CBD in South Hedland. Their block size range from 4,000 to 8,000 square meters. Inserting that provision protected the intended use of the land for rural living. So departing from that concept clearly will conflict with the people that live in rural areas currently, and set a precedent for camps to be built within their rural living lifestyle. The demonstrated need for this proposal has not been supplied when talking about industry expansion. This is a specific requirement for the approval of workforce accommodation. The need is not attached to any explanation or plan or any major industry or any development proposal that requires a workforce of this size. If we talk about tourism, there should be a needs analysis evidence that suggests the demand for such a development for a 6-month tourist season, because that's all we have in this area. And there is no analysis on the impact to existing tourism businesses that are currently operating in the area. And I suggest that a proposal like this, if it were approved, would destroy the current struggling operators. So I'll leave it there, and I will be supporting the alternative recommendation. Thanks, RDAP members.
Thank you, Councillor Camillo. Further speakers? Dale.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess for me, there are still too many questions that need to be answered about this proposal. There's still too much detail that as a planning decision maker, I would need before I could agree to approve this proposal. There's over a page of requested amendments and extra information to be included into a traffic impact assessment. And I feel we really need to have that information before we can be sure that the proposal won't impact the amenity of the surrounding area. The last feedback from the design review panel, in my view, from what I've written, wasn't supportive in my view. The panel highlighted the inadequacy of the information presented, raised shortcomings with the design, and I'm not comfortable for critical design issues for such a significant development to be dealt with as part of an operational management plan or as part of a schedule of colours, materials and facade treatments to clear a condition of planning approval. There's a stated commitment to public access to certain components of the development that would be ironed out as part of said operational management plan, and a legal agreement that would come later. Now, whether or not that occurs, how that all works is fundamental in considering the planning merits of the proposal at this important juncture. On the issue of whether or not the DAP has discretion to approve the application, I know the applicant's legal opinion that despite item 5.1 in table 7 under clause 32 of the scheme, the development could be approved under clause 34 of the scheme that deals with variations to site and development requirements. Now that may be so, but as per clause 34(5)(b) of the scheme, in exercising such discretion, the decision maker needs to be satisfied that the non-compliance with the additional site and development requirements will not have a significant adverse effect on the occupiers or users of the development, the inhabitants of the locality, or likely future development of the locality. And I simply don't have enough information to convince me this is the case. Indeed, an opposing and quite compelling view has been set out in quite some detail in the presentations done by Mr. Hightower on behalf of the residents that he is supporting. Therefore, I will be supporting the alternate recommendation to refuse the application, and my main reason for doing so is that inadequate information has been provided to enable this panel to make an informed decision about the merits of the proposal. And if the application is refused, I encourage the applicants to work with the town officers to resolve the design to the extent that the design review panel can give unreserved support for the design. I encourage a draft operational management plan and all it should entail to be prepared and submitted to the town's satisfaction before it lands back on a DAP agenda. I encourage the finalisation of a complete traffic assessment to be submitted to the town with all the inclusions requested in the RA. And I encourage preparation of compelling information that would convince a panel that approval of the proposal would meet the requirements of clause 34(5)(b) of the scheme. That is, if we were to exercise discretion under clause 34(2) of the scheme, that the non-compliance with the relevant additional site and development requirements would not have a significant adverse effect on the occupiers or users of the development, the inhabitants of the locality, or the likely future development of the locality. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mayor Carter, did you want to speak?
No, I concur with Councillor Blanco's comment as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Look, just I will speak very briefly, but part of that is I wanted to, if we could put that back on the screen, please. I just wanted to, the preamble needs to be just sorted out a little bit, so we get that done as an amendment. Or
if Karen's happy with it,
yeah, okay.
We can just do it as administrative.
All right. So the preamble would read refuse development application, but that application reference, we've got that in accordance with clause 68 of Schedule 2.
You want to add those? Yes, yes.
Yeah.
In accordance.
Accordance with clause 68 of Schedule 2. in brackets deemed provisions, close brackets, of the planning and development, brackets, local planning scheme, close brackets, regulations 2015, comma, and the provisions of the Town of Port Hedland local planning scheme number 7.
And the provisions of
the Town of Port Hedland local planning scheme number 7. So okay. Yeah, for the following reasons, so that we can take out reasons. Yep. And I think down further there was a TPS 7.
LPS.
LPS 7, yeah, there, it's LPS.
okay, yeah.
Yep. All right. Mover and seconder happy with that? It's just a administrative.
Yes,
All
thank
right.
you, presiding member.
Thank you. Look, I agree with everything that's been said, and I don't want to labour the point, but I felt that I could not support this mainly because I had very little idea of what was actually being approved. To present it as a tourist style accommodation, but it may or may not be used by the workforce, the tavern, called a tavern, but it's really a wet mess apparently. I just felt that in response to the questions being asked, there was a bit of oscillation from the applicants as to trying to guess what we were looking for that would get support. So I think there is a high degree of uncertainty around what we're being asked to approve here, and for those reasons, I fully support the motion to refuse, and for all the other reasons that have been presented this morning. So I'll go back to the mover to close debate.
I don't think I need to say any more. I think everybody has spoken. I think we are of similar views, so I'm happy to go to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to refuse with those reasons. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Just going on to item 4, there are no Form 2 DAP applications, no Section 31 SAT reconsiderations, and there's a list of SAT matters currently underway. I will declare the meeting closed at 12:09, and thank you for your attendance.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.